All right, so we're taking a deep dive today into something I think we can all relate to, understanding why people leave.
Mm.
And we're going to be looking at it through this really unique lens, this piece called Pasted Text.
Oh, yeah.
It kind of blends personal stories,
Great.
spiritual reflections, and even Islamic teachings
Interesting.
as a way to understand loss and attachment.
Okay.
So get ready, because I think you're going to hear some surprising insights about,
Yeah.
this world, the meaning of loss, and just how much our attachments shape our experiences.
Yeah. I think the author really starts off strong with this powerful image of a fragile vase. Like, just imagine it being placed repeatedly on the edge of a table.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the significance there?
Well, think about it. You keep putting something delicate in a really precarious position. It's only a matter of time before it falls and breaks, right?
Yeah.
So the author is using this to represent how we relied on temporary things for our happiness. Like, we're building our emotional foundation on shaky ground, Yeah.
And they get really personal, too, sharing their own struggles with clinging to people and outcomes.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that feeling of wanting to hold on to things tight, even when, deep down they might not last.
Right.
It's like setting yourself up for disappointment.
Exactly. And this is where the author's perspective, rooted in Islamic teachings, adds a whole other layer. They bring in this Quranic verse that really emphasizes the importance of holding on to the most trustworthy handhold, which is God, because that never breaks.
So it's like a contrast between the fragility of our worldly attachments and the strength and permanence of a relationship with God.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes a lot of sense.
Like, we're constantly searching for this lasting happiness in places that are designed to be temporary. And to illustrate this point, they use these concepts of Dunya and Jannah.
Oh, okay. So if the dunya is like that fragile vase always at risk of breaking, tell me more about this idea of Jannah. What does that represent?
So in Islam, Dunya refers to this temporary, imperfect world.
It's like trying to build a permanent home on a foundation of sand. Whereas Jannah represents the eternal paradise, the solid ground that can withstand any storm.
Okay.
The author's point is that our human nature yearns for perfection and permanence.
Right.
But we keep seeking it in this ever-changing dunya,
Yeah.
and that's bound to lead to heartbreak.
It's like we're hardwired to seek the eternal, but we get so distracted by the shiny temporary things. But then the author talks about pain.
Yes.
Is that where this disconnect between our desires and reality shows up?
I think that's where their perspective on pain gets really interesting.
Okay.
Because they suggest that pain isn't just something to avoid. It's a signal, almost like a wake-up call,
Okay.
highlighting our misplaced attachments.
So it's not necessarily a punishment, but more like a redirection.
Exactly. Pain is pointing us toward the things we're clinging to that might be hindering our spiritual growth,
Okay.
the things that are blocking our path to God. They even connect this back to a Quranic verse about those who place their hope in the dunya instead of their meeting with God, essentially prioritizing the temporary over the eternal.
Yeah, it makes you think about where you're placing your own hopes and expectations, right?
Absolutely.
If we're constantly looking for fulfillment in things that are inherently fleeting,
Right.
careers, possessions, even relationships, are we setting ourselves up for this roller coaster of emotions?
Absolutely. Take, for example, the reaction of Abu Bakr, who was a close companion of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him.
Okay.
When the Prophet passed away, many were just completely overcome with grief.
Yeah.
But Abu Bakr remained really steadfast, reminding everyone that, their true reliance should be on the eternal God.
That's such a powerful example. It really highlights that difference between finding stability in something unchanging, like a relationship with God, versus something as unpredictable as, worldly circumstances.
Exactly. And the author brings up another interesting point about how we often misunderstand the Quranic verse. Verily, with hardship comes ease.
Yeah, I've always heard that interpreted as ease coming after hardship. Like you go through the hardship and then the ease comes.
Right.
But the author's suggesting something different.
Yeah, they're actually arguing that ease exists within the hardship.
Oh, wow.
It's not about waiting for the storm to pass,
Okay.
but learning to find those moments of calm and peace, even amidst the chaos. And this idea ties back into the concept that nothing in this life is purely good or bad. It's all a mix.
Yeah, that really changes your perspective. Instead of waiting for things to get better, you start to appreciate the nuances, the good mixed in with the bad, knowing that neither one lasts forever.
Right, and that impermanence applies to both the positive and the negative.
Okay.
Just as that beautiful rose will eventually wither, so too will our sadness or pain eventually fade. Nothing in the dunya is meant to last.
Which leads to the question, how do we navigate a world where everything is temporary? If nothing lasts, how do we find true contentment and peace of mind?
That's where the author's insights about the trap of perfection come into play.
Okay.
They talk about how seeking perfection in this world can lead us to become consumed by moments, whether they're positive or negative, as if those fleeting experiences represent the entirety of reality.
So it's about finding that balance between appreciating the beauty of this world without clinging to it too tightly.
Right.
Is that where understanding this concept of dunya versus jannah becomes really crucial?
Exactly. Recognizing that the dunya is inherently imperfect helps us to step outside of those fleeting moments and see them for what they are, temporary experiences on a much larger journey.
It's like gaining a wider perspective, you know?
Yeah.
You can enjoy the sweetness of a ripe strawberry without expecting that sweetness to last forever.
Exactly.
You can grieve a loss without letting that grief consume your entire being.
Right.
You start to see the bigger picture.
And that's where the author introduces a really hopeful concept. The idea that what is taken by God is never truly lost. And they cite examples from Islamic history like Prophet Yusuf separated from his family for years, yet ultimately reunited.
Oh.
Or Prophet Musa sent down the river as a baby, only to be raised in the palace of the Pharaoh himself.
These stories woven into Islamic history really remind us that even in moments of seeming loss, a greater plan is unfolding.
Right.
But if God ultimately intends to return what's taken, why take it away in the first place?
That's a question that a lot of people grapple with, and it's one that the author addresses in a really fascinating way.
I'm all ears. This deep dive is getting more and more intriguing.
Get ready, because this is where things get really interesting.
All right, so you're saying the author tackles this question of why God might take things away, even if he intends to return them.
Right, like it can be hard to wrap our heads around that, right?
Absolutely.
So they use this really relatable analogy.
Right.
Imagine a child totally absorbed by a new toy, neglecting everything else, chores, meals, you name it.
Yeah.
A wise parent would recognize this unhealthy attachment, right? And they'd temporarily remove the toy.
I see where you're going with this. It's about breaking that dependence, restoring balance.
Precisely. The author links this to our relationship with God. Sometimes he takes things away not as a punishment, but to break our reliance on those things and redirect our hearts back to him.
So it's like a divine intervention.
Yeah.
Helping us to shift our focus from the temporary to the eternal.
Exactly.
But what happens when the something better that replaces what we lost isn't a physical object?
Right.
What if it's something less tangible?
Yeah, the author actually dives into that, asking what if the something better that replaces a loss is a deeper connection with God?
That's a really profound thought. I mean, loss can be such a catalyst for spiritual growth.
Absolutely. They actually share the story of Malik ibn Dinar, a man whose daughter was tragically taken from him.
Oh, I've heard of that story. It's heartbreaking, but such a beautiful message.
So after his daughter's death, Malik ibn Dinar, he devoted his life to God. Finding solace and strength in his faith.
Yeah.
And his loss became a catalyst for this profound spiritual transformation.
Like his immense grief opened up this space for an even deeper connection with the divine.
Exactly. And they even quote Ibn al-Qayyim, a renowned Islamic scholar, who said, "The divine decree related to the believer is always a bounty, even if it is in the form of withholding something that is desired. And it is a blessing, even if it appears to be a trial and an affliction that has befallen him. It is in reality a cure, even though it appears to be a disease."
Wow, those are powerful words. It suggests that even in what we perceive as negative, there can be these hidden blessings, this divine wisdom that we might not initially grasp.
Right. It really encourages this shift in perspective. Instead of viewing these trials and tribulations just solely as negative experiences, we can start to see them as opportunities for growth, for healing, and deepening our connection with God.
It really ties back into that idea of ease within hardship, finding the blessings even in the midst of pain.
Exactly. And going back to that earlier question, does what is lost ever truly return?
Right. I'm curious to hear how the author answers that.
They offer this very reassuring yes. Sometimes it returns in this life.
Okay.
Sometimes in the hereafter. Sometimes in a different perhaps even better form.
So it's not always a direct replacement, but there's always a form of return, whether we recognize it or not.
Exactly. However, they emphasize that the true essence of dealing with loss isn't about the return of what was taken. It's about the transformative journey it takes us on.
It's about the lessons learned, the personal growth.
Right.
The realization that our true reliance should be on God, not the fleeting aspects of this world.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And they conclude by reminding us of a verse from the Quran urging us to find joy in the bounty and mercy of God. It's a reminder that His blessings far surpass anything that we could ever accumulate in this temporary world.
That's a beautiful note to end on. It really shifts our perspective from what we've lost to the limitless possibilities of what we can gain through a connection with the divine.
I think this piece really prompts us to reflect on loss attachment and the nature of this world, encouraging us to examine our own experiences and consider, where we might be clinging too tightly to things that are meant to be temporary.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a powerful reminder that even in the midst of pain and loss, there's always hope.
Right.
Always a chance for transformation. And always a path back to the one who loves us most. It's interesting, how this conversation has really shifted my perspective on how we deal with loss.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just about accepting that something's gone, but recognizing what we can learn from that experience.
And I think that's a key takeaway from this piece,
Yeah.
The author doesn't try to sugarcoat the pain of loss, but they highlight its transformative power.
Yeah. I'm especially intrigued by how they describe pain as like a pointer, revealing those hidden attachments we might not even realize are holding us back.
Yeah, it's like those attachments become so ingrained in our lives that we don't even recognize their grip until they're kind of forcibly removed.
Yeah, and in that process of letting go, we're forced to confront our dependence on the temporary and shift our focus back to that one constant, our relationship with God.
The author emphasizes that true stability and peace of heart can only be found, when our attachments are rooted in something unchanging, something eternal.
It's like building your house on solid rock instead of shifting sand. When those inevitable storms of life come, you have that firm foundation that can withstand them.
That's a great analogy. I like that.
The piece also emphasizes the importance of perspective.
Yeah.
Not getting swept away by the fleeting moments of this world, whether they're good or bad.
Exactly, because we know neither the highs nor the lows last forever.
Right.
It's about understanding that this life is a journey. And these moments are just, waypoints along the path.
And that path ultimately leads us back to God if we allow it to. Loss, in a way, can be a redirection.
Right.
A course correction, guiding us back to our true purpose.
Absolutely.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm struck by a sense of hope.
Oh, yeah.
Even in the face of loss.
Yeah. It's a reminder that what is taken by God is never truly lost. It might return in a different form.
Okay.
Or it might pave the way for something even better, something that draws us closer to Him.
Perhaps the most profound takeaway is that, true fulfillment lies in surrendering our attachments to the things of this world.
Right.
And nurturing our connection with God.
Exactly.
That's where that lasting peace and happiness resides.
This deep dive has given us a lot to think about.
It has.
As you navigate the complexities of life, consider this.
Okay. If pain reveals our false attachments, what does the pain in your life tell you about what you might be clinging to too tightly? What opportunities for growth and redirection might be hidden within your own experiences of loss?
That's a powerful question to ponder as we continue on this journey of life.
It is.
It's been a really insightful exploration of why people leave.
Yeah.
And what we can learn from those departures. Remember, even in loss, there's always hope.
Absolutely.
Always a chance for transformation.
Yes.
And always a path back to the one who loves us most.
Beautiful.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.